Chapter 722. How is it? Are you wavering? Have you thought about when you will leave Feng Nation with me? If you don't, Imo Wushang will probably come back regardless of anything. When he comes back, Feng Juqing will definitely. I will return to the general's mansion tomorrow. 3 days later, we will depart. He was waiting for her to say this. Hong Fui felt like he was out of luck after staying here for this period of time. Although the beauty was good, it was not as comfortable as staying in the northern kingdom. Thinking about it, he hadn't seen little Yu from the drunken flower brothel for a long time. He wondered how much she missed him. Feng Juqing has arranged quite a number of secret guards in the Phoenix Perch Palace. It won't be easy for me to take you out of the palace smoothly. In these 3 days, you need to convince Feng Juqing to let go of your desire to leave the palace. Only then can you leave the palace smoothly. I understand. Actually, Shen Yueji was a little excited to leave Feng Nation's palace. It wasn't because she was reluctant to leave. She had spent 2 lives here. Although it wasn't a long time, it was unforgettable, because in just a few days, she had experienced a lot here. Lu Qingru, you need to be careful of her. Now you know that what I said to you is true. This woman is not a kind person. I reminded you again and again, but you didn't listen. Now you know that I didn't lie to you? Shen Yueji glanced at him. I told you to be careful, so be careful. I also don't want Imo Wushang to leave you here. If that happens, you won't be able to return alive. A grave expression appeared on Hong Fui's handsome face. Actually, to be honest, if Lu Qingru really made a move against me, with just the power of the Xinming sect, I really might not be their opponent in order to eliminate me. However, I didn't offend them, so they shouldn't want to do anything to me for no reason, right? Shen Yueji didn't know how to explain it to him. She only said, anyway, I told you to be careful, so be careful. All right, don't worry. I will be on guard these few days. When Shen Yueji returned from the Imperial Garden, she saw the man who was supposed to be lying on the bed had gotten up. He sat on the round chair and casually picked up a drawing book that she usually read during her free time to look at it. The contents of the sketchbook were all beautiful scenery outside of the capital. There were vast crowds of people there, and there were not as many restrictions and rules. Perhaps the man was so focused that he didn't even notice Shen Yueji's entrance. When Shen Yueji walked in front of him, he raised his head and looked at her. His thin lips curled into a smile. He took the initiative to take her hand and pull her to sit on his lap. If you like the life outside the palace, after Zhen finishes with the matters of the court, Zhen will take you outside the palace to play for a while. What do you think? Suppressing the resistance in her heart, Shen Yueji smiled. Her expression was not as perfunctory and cold as before. Why hasn't the emperor rested for so long? Feng Juqing played with a lock of her hair that hung by her ear and smiled. Yuji ran out alone in the middle of the night. How can we sleep soundly? He hugged the little person in his arms even tighter. I will try to understand you more. Yuji, try to accept me again, okay? The man's thin lips were rosy and beautiful, with a soft touch. She watched as he pressed down on her again. Chapter 723. Shen Yueji was shocked and hurriedly reached out to cover his lips. Your Majesty, it's getting late. You should rest early. You still have to attend morning court tomorrow. Although he was a little displeased, seeing her obedient appearance, Feng Juqing tugged his lips and pulled her hand into his arms. Okay, then I'll listen to you. Go rest. He picked up Shen Yueji by the waist and gently placed her on the bed. Then he followed her to the bed and naturally held Shen Yueji in his arms. Thinking about it, since she entered the palace, this was the first time he hugged her to sleep like this. In the 3 months he had been the emperor, he had doted on 2 or 3 of his concubines. To him, there was no pleasure or enjoyment, but it was his duty as the emperor. Moreover, once the duty was completed, he would withdraw and leave. He would definitely not linger on their beds for long. Women were just tools for men to relieve themselves when they were tired. Those young masters of aristocratic families would think so. Although he had never thought so, he had no interest in women. Most of them were just playful. But only Shen Yueji. Feng Juqing never knew that in this world, there was really something so easily satisfied. When he hugged Gu Yueqin in the past, although it made him feel at ease, it was not as strong as hugging Shinyueji. Because Shinyueji not only gave him peace of mind, but also a kind of satisfaction. What's more, he wanted to hug her like this. He wanted to hug her like this every day and every night. As long as she was willing to stay by his side, he would do nothing. Even he didn't know when he started to care so much about Shinyueji. He only knew that she really didn't need to do anything. As long as he hugged her like this, he was willing to give her everything, everything she wanted. Your Majesty's words to this concubine, does it still count? As long as it was said to Yueji, it naturally counts? Hearing the little woman's muffled voice in his arms, Feng Juqing felt his heart soften. Your Majesty said to make me the Empress. Feng Juqing's heart softened when he heard the little woman's grumbling tone. He couldn't help but hug her tightly. His pitch-black eyes were bright and gentle like the resplendent stars in the night sky. Yuji, are you willing to stay and accompany us? Don't worry. Since we promised you to be our Empress, you will definitely be our only Empress. He planted a gentle kiss on the woman's brow. There's no need to feel uncomfortable in the palace. You just need to relax and do whatever you want. In this palace, with me protecting you, no one will dare to do anything to you. Your Majesty, this is bad. Something big happened. At this moment, Gao Dazhong's voice suddenly came from outside. The emperor was faintly displeased. Even the hand that was hugging Shinyueji couldn't help but tighten. But then he remembered that Gao Dazhong had been by his side for so many years. He was the only person that he allowed to stay by his side for so many years. Usually, if it wasn't something important, he would handle it on his behalf. He wouldn't act like this, shouting and acting like this. Your Majesty, hearing eunuch Gao's nervous tone, something big must have happened in the palace. You should get up and go take a look. Feng Juqing nodded and got up. Seeing that Shinyueji also got up, he hugged her and walked out of the bedroom. What made you so flustered? Chapter 724. Gao Dazhong saw the emperor and quickly knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, Imperial Consort. Your Majesty, something big has happened. The envoy sent by Nan Yu has gone missing. Missing? The emperor's gaze, hearing this, suddenly narrowed. Even the warm aura around him gradually decreased. Is it true? The servants serving him said that he has been missing for almost 4 hours. In this palace, because of his special identity, His Majesty is afraid that he will be in danger, so he has been strictly guarded. Moreover, the guards in the palace have searched everywhere, but have not found even a shadow of him. No matter how high Qing Xian's status was, this was the Feng Kingdom. He was not familiar with the people in the place. Plus, he had only been in the Feng Kingdom for a short period of time. He never had the habit of going out at night. Even if he did, it would be impossible for him to be missing for almost 4 hours. In addition, he had been searched everywhere in the palace, big and small, but he was nowhere to be found. It was hard not to suspect that something had happened to him. As expected, the emperor frowned. Shinyueji saw this and continued, "Is that so? Did Nan Yu's Qing Xian leave the palace? Even the phoenix? Oh, your Majesty! The phoenix and peacock are all dead." Hearing Shinyueji's words, Gao Dazhong quickly continued, "In Qing Xian's bedroom. When I went to ask, I found out that the phoenix and peacock died when Qing Xian went missing. They died horribly. It was as if their blood had been sucked dry. They were no longer as beautiful as before. All that was left was a pile of white bones and feathers. There was a rumor in Nanyu that the phoenix and peacock were one. If something had happened to Qing Xian, then the phoenix and peacock would not be alive." Hearing what Gao Dazhong said and the rumors about Nanyu, Feng Juqing clenched his fists under his robe. Did something really happen to Qing Xian in the Feng Kingdom? Shinyueji grabbed the emperor's hand. "Your Majesty, isn't the envoy from Nanyu highly skilled in martial arts? Why would he go missing for no reason?" Indeed, Qing Xian was highly skilled. He seemed to be on par with the emperor of Nanyu. Although Feng Juqing had never exchanged blows with him, he could still feel the strength of his martial arts and inner energy from the strong inner energy that he exuded. Logically speaking, in the imperial palace, his brocade secret guards were everywhere, so it was impossible for anything to happen to him. In the entire imperial palace, Who could be his match? Even if it was a fight, there should have been some commotion. It was impossible for something to happen to him so quietly. The emperor's face darkened. Qiuyang. Emperor. Go and investigate. We must find out Qing Xian's whereabouts at all costs, dead or alive. Yes. Something had happened to the phoenix and peacock, which was enough to show that even if Qing Xian were to be found, it would only be a corpse. What was strange was that he could not even find a corpse. His head started to hurt, and the emperor's expression changed slightly. Xin Yueji observed his expression and saw that he did not suspect her. Indeed, although he had some conflicts with Qing Xian the last time they met, this man was too sinister and full of schemes, especially with his superb martial arts. In Feng Juqing's eyes, her martial arts skills were nothing but mediocre. Even if he suspected someone, he would not suspect her. She was initially observing Feng Juqing's expression to see what he was thinking and guessing. Chapter 725. But unexpectedly, she vaguely saw the emperor rubbing his eyebrows in frustration under the dim morning light. His dark eyes slowly turned scarlet. But when it was about to turn scarlet, Feng Juqing seemed to know that person would come out, so he suppressed it until the scarlet eyes turned black again. She couldn't help but suspect that the other soul in Feng Juqing's body would only come out when he lost control of his emotions. Yueji, I ordered Gao Dazhong to send you back to rest. Your Majesty, I haven't seen father and mother for a long time. Since I promised your Majesty to stay, I would like to go back and tell them about this. General Shen didn't go to the palace yesterday. Mother and father had something to do in the palace, so they only sent eldest brother. I didn't see father and mother. The man's eyebrows moved and he nodded. He forced a smile and caressed her head gently. That's good. I will order people to protect you secretly. It's a special time in the palace now, so you'll be safe in the palace. After I'm done with these trivial matters, I'll bring you back. By then, he looked at Shun Yueji with a gaze filled with gentleness and deep affection. If he was not the emperor and was just a commoner, at this moment, he would be looking at his most beloved woman. Everything in the world seemed to melt into a gentle spring in his eyes. No matter how vast or big the world was, it couldn't compare to the woman in front of him who lit up the light in his eyes. It's the Empress crowning ceremony. It was almost dawn when she returned to Fengqi Palace. Xin Yueji didn't sleep for the whole night, but she didn't feel sleepy at all. She sat on the beauty chair until a good-looking big hand stretched out in front of her. Following the teacup in the hand, she raised her head and saw Hong Fui's seductive face. Have a cup of water. You look so worried. If Imo Wushang sees this, he might suspect that I'm mistreating you. Xin Yueji glanced at the tea he handed over, took it, and took a sip. Seeing that you have appeared so boldly in this Phoenix Perch Palace, is it because Feng Juqing withdrew those hidden guards? It's not a small matter if something happens to an important envoy like Nanyu in Feng country. Don't forget that Qing Xian's status in the Feng nation is unparalleled. Even the emperor of Nanyue valued Qing Xian a lot. Under normal circumstances, if it wasn't something important, he wouldn't have sent Qing Xian. And this time, although he didn't come, he sent his right-hand man. You can imagine how much he values the cooperation between the two nations. It's a pity that his most important right-hand man is in trouble in your Feng nation. Say, do you think Feng Juqing will trace this matter back to you? Hong Fui. He stared at her in astonishment. You sold me out? What kind of person do you think I am? Why would this consort betray you? Hong Fui squinted at her and snorted. Then it's not convenient? As long as you don't betray this young master, how could Feng Juqing possibly find out about this young master? I'm merely reminding you. Did you think that Feng Juqing didn't know anything? How did he manage to sit on the throne? Do all of you really think that the emperor of Feng country is your playground? That anyone can come and go as they please? Chapter 726. This time, he transferred away all the secret guards that were arranged in Bungong's Fengqi Palace. His purpose is to thoroughly investigate the palace. Speaking of this, Xin Yueji's expression was a bit absent-minded. If he really investigated the palace thoroughly, then the outsiders in the palace, not only Hong Fui, but also the people in Huayang Palace would be found by him. Tomorrow, I will leave the palace to return to the Shin family. It just so happens that you will leave the palace with Bingong. In this way, even if Feng Juqing turns the palace upside down, he will not be able to find any clues from you. Hearing this, Hong Fui's face suddenly revealed an expectant expression. This time, it is a rare opportunity to leave the palace. Did Feng Juqing allow you to leave the palace? Xin Yueji nodded, and he said that the palace is a little chaotic recently. In addition, Nan Yu's envoy had an accident in the palace under his eyes. He intends to let me go back to the residence to lie low. After he has dealt with these trivial matters, he will bring me back. She did not tell Hong Fui that Feng Juqing wanted to confer her as the empress. Just take this opportunity of you leaving the palace to go back to Northern Underworld with me? I think that guy can't wait any longer. If I don't bring you back, he will suspect that I am lying to him. I think so too. It was just that Shen Yueji was still a little hesitant, but I need to think carefully about what method to use to not implicate the Shen family. This is the only thing that I can give them. All right, then you think carefully. Don't sleep? Then let this little lord have a good sleep on your bed in this Feng Qi palace. These few days, I have been monitored by the people that Feng Juqing sent over. This little lord has not had a good sleep. I am deeply afraid that they will find out something. I think that not only this little lord, but even Huayang Palace has quietened down a lot. Shin Yueji saw that after he finished saying this sentence, he walked inside, not caring whether she agreed or not. Glancing at him faintly, she got up and went to Huayang Palace. With regards to her arrival, Lu Qingru was very surprised. She was surprised and happy at the same time. She had thought that after the previous incident, her Qin would already bear a grudge against her. She had thought that her Qin would never pay attention to her again. So much so that when she suddenly came to look for her, even though she was standing right in front of her, Lu Qingru still felt a sense of helplessness and could only stare at her. Qin. Something happened to Nan Yu's envoy in the palace, and now Feng Juqing has gathered all the secret guards in the palace, the embroidered uniform guards, with the goal of finding Qin Xian's whereabouts. I guess your Huayang Palace will not be an exception. You know that as long as Feng Juqing wants to investigate, he will definitely be able to find out. You have people from the mysterious dark sect here, so you'd better hide well. Otherwise, they'll definitely find you. Her face was filled with excitement and joy. So Xiner, you came here to tell me all this, right? Actually, in your heart, you're still worried about me, right? In the past, Shun Yueji liked this kind of gentle and affectionate look. But ever since she found out about her feelings for her, she really couldn't face it. Her kindness to her, mixed with love, and the way she looked at her, made her feel very uncomfortable. Shin Yueji pursed her lips and quickly looked elsewhere. Qingru, I think that we are suitable to be friends. Moreover, I really treat you as my friend, the kind that is higher than family. Chapter 727. However, I advise you to retract your other thoughts as soon as possible. Otherwise, she didn't finish her sentence, but Lu Qingru understood. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to be friends. She clenched her fists but didn't say anything. She just looked at her and laughed weakly. Shin Yueji couldn't bear to look at her. She knew that Lu Qingru treated her very well, especially well. For her, Lu Qingru was willing to give up everything. However, she couldn't do it. Just because of her love, she couldn't be so heartless to not have any contact with her. That would be letting her down. However, especially after knowing her feelings for her, it was an inexplicable feeling. Both of them were women, so why did she have such feelings? She was supposed to like men. She owed her too much, so she couldn't be heartless enough to break up with her. However, she couldn't accept such a strong and undeniable love, which made her feel a lot more distant from her. However, at the same time, Shin Yueji also knew that Lu Qingru couldn't watch her put herself in danger. When she was in danger, Lu Qingru would still help her. This was what she owed her, and it was also because of their friendship for so many years. Other than that, there was nothing else. Lu Qingru's pale face suddenly smiled. Qin, actually, you should know that you don't owe me anything. The things that you owe me have already been paid off by others. I secretly plotted to force your mother to death, so that Morong Yun would know the truth of that year too early. Even the Shen family, because I was jealous of how much you cared for them. Because of my selfishness, I wanted to destroy them. I wanted you to completely cut off contact with them. I wanted them to know your identity. This way, they would know that the one they loved was not their own daughter, but someone else. This way, you would see their true colors. You would know that in this world, the person who truly treats you well, the person who truly loves you, is me, not them. Other than that, I've also done many things behind your back. Many things that you can't accept, be it Gu Yuan's death, Gu Mujue knowing about it, or Gu Muqing. Gu Muin is my enemy. Morong Yun is also my enemy. You know that I hate them and have taken revenge for me. I can understand that, but Gu Muqing is different. From the beginning to the end, he was just a fool. Moreover, he helped me a lot when I was young. Have you forgotten? You once praised him, saying that fortune favors fools, and you once sincerely thanked him for the help he gave me. But Qiner, I'm afraid you care about him. I'm afraid you care about him. Do you understand? I'm afraid that after you see him, your heart will soften, and you will remember the help he gave you in the past. I'm afraid that there will be another person in your heart. Once there's someone in your heart, no matter if it's a man or a woman, even if it's a stranger, I'll feel extremely uncomfortable if you look at him. I won't be able to breathe. Do you understand? Qingru, how did you become like this? Maybe this is the feeling of loving someone. Qiner, do you think that I'm different? Even I think that I'm different. I'm supposed to like men. I've had affairs with so many men. But why? Why did I like you? Why do I like you so much that I can't extricate myself? For you, I'm willing to let go of everything. As long as you're happy, even if it's just one word, even if you want me to die, I'm willing. Chapter 728. Seeing that she was so agitated, Xin Yueji didn't want to listen anymore. She took a step back and said, "Yes, you're right. You've done so many things behind my back, and many of them hurt me. You've already reached the point of no return. You used your help to pay off the debt, just to dispel my scruples towards you in my heart. But I remember how much you've done for me. I won't forget it at all. Tomorrow, I'll return to the Xin Mansion. Then, I'll go to the northern underworld with Hong Fui. You're staying in the Feng Nation's palace because of me, right? Tomorrow, you can also return to the northern underworld. Aren't you coming with me?" Lu Qingru's expression was sorrowful. Xin Yueji looked at her and said, "Qingru, how many more times do you want me to say it? It's impossible between you and me. Moreover, I have someone I like now. Even if I don't, I can't go back to the northern underworld with you and go to your Xinming sect." If she didn't know her feelings for her before, she might have gone to her Xinming sect to stay for a while. However, she had a Mo Wushang after all. She could only stay there temporarily. But now, after learning of Lu Qingru's feelings for her, Shun Yueji dispelled such thoughts. To be exact, in order to make Lu Qingru dispel those thoughts in her heart, she could only choose to ignore Lu Qingru. Shun Yueji believed that only with enough time, and using this method would Lu Qingru realize how ridiculous her thoughts were. Perhaps after a long time, these feelings that didn't dare to exist would slowly fade. She would also slowly realize that her understanding and perception were all wrong. She shouldn't be like this. She didn't look at the cold light in Lu Qingru's eyes. After Shan Yueji finished speaking, she wanted to leave. However, when she turned around, Lu Qingru grabbed her hand. Shin Yueji turned around and looked at her. "What else do you want to do?" The woman's eyes were filled with tears. "Qiner, I was wrong. I won't have those thoughts anymore. Don't ignore me. Okay? Do you know that every time I think of you treating me like a stranger, my heart hurts so much? I really can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it when you ignore me." Speaking of which, seeing Lu Qingru like this, Shen Yueji also felt a bit reluctant in her heart. She couldn't help but pat the back of Lu Qingru's hand. "All right, I just feel that you need to calm down. I didn't say that I'll ignore you. No matter what happens in the future, I'll still be here. Didn't I rush over to inform you after I received the news that Feng Juqing is investigating the palace? If I wasn't worried about you, why would I be willing to meddle in this matter?" Qingro, I just want you to think it through. You and I are only suited to be friends. As for whether or not we can be friends in the end, it all depends on you. Do you understand? Shun Yueji had already spoken to this extent. Even a fool would understand what she was trying to say, especially Lu Qingru, who cared so much about her feelings and reactions. How could she not understand the meaning behind her words? She smiled, suppressing the sourness that surged up from the bottom of her heart. I understand. I really understand everything. I'll do as you say. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Since you want to be friends, then we'll be friends. As long as you don't ignore me, okay? Chapter 729. I still have things to do at Fengqi Palace. It's a special period now, so I can't stay here for too long. If Feng Zhiqing finds out, I'm afraid he'll suspect us. I'll go back first. You have to be careful here. As for those people from your Shimming sect, tell them to find a place to hide as soon as possible. It's best if they don't show themselves for the next few days. Okay. He gave her a few simple instructions, and Lu Qingru listened attentively and obediently. Shin Yueji saw that her instructions were almost done, so she bid farewell and left. After Shan Yueji left, Lu Qingru still stared at her back in a daze without looking away. The left guardian appeared behind her. Saint, are you still going to carry out the task of assassinating Hongfui? No. Lu Qingru didn't look at her. She still stared in the direction Shin Yueji left. There's no need to kill him now. If anything happens to him in Feng Country, I'm afraid Qin won't be willing to go to Northern Underworld. Since Qin has the intention to go to Northern Underworld, then let Hongfui bring her back. Northern Underworld is our Shimming sect's territory. At that time, it'll be easy to kill him. It's not the time yet, Qin. She repeated the name in her heart. Why are you still so silly and naive? Do you know that if you really love someone, you'll love them to the point where you're willing to die for them? How can you be willing to be friends? Qin, it's easy for you to say, but it's really hard for me to do it. I'm sorry, I might have to do something behind your back again. But Qin, I'm doing this for your own good. You'll forgive me, right? I know you've always spoiled me. I also know you'll forgive me. You won't blame me, because in this world, I'm the only one who treats you sincerely and treats you well. As for the rest, they were all hypocritical. I'm the only one who's sincere. When she returned to Fengqi Palace, she saw double happiness guarding outside. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she had just cried. Seeing her, she quickly wiped the tears on her face and ran towards her. Did the Empress go to Concubine Rose Place? Seeing her like this, Shun Yueji's voice couldn't help but soften. She stretched out her hand and wiped the tears on her face. Well, why are you crying? Did someone bully you again? Your ladyship is currently in the midst of her divine favor. Even the concubines in the inner palace don't dare to offend this servant. They can't wait to curry favor with this servant. Who would dare to bully this servant? This servant is just wondering if Nyang Nyang doesn't trust this servant anymore. In the past, no matter where Nyang Nyang went, you would always let this servant follow you. Shuangxi raised her head to look at her. Nyang Nyang, no matter who you are, this servant only knows that you are this servant's mistress. Are you planning to go to the Northern Underworld to find the son-in-law? Can you bring me along? Seeing her suddenly kneel down in front of her, her voice carried a thick, sobbing tone. Since young, this servant has grown up with young Miss and has never been separated. Now that young Miss is gone, this servant doesn't know what to do. Only by following by your ladyship's side does this servant feel like I have a home. If your highness goes to the Northern Underworld and doesn't bring this servant, she really didn't know what to do in the future. Although the general's mansion was good, Madam and the general had never mistreated her, but she still liked to stay with young Mississippi. Chapter 730. In the past, Miss loved to bully her. Now, Miss only teased her. Most of the time, Miss was thinking for her. She wanted to follow Miss forever, stay by her side, and serve her for the rest of her life. Shin Yueji was moved. She bent down in front of her and touched her shoulders. Shuangxi, since you know my identity, you should know that I am not a member of the Shin family. You are the one who grew up in the Shin family. You are inseparable from the Shun family. I will go back to the northern underworld. You should stay here because this is your home. But where is home without Miss? I just want to be with Mississippi. Please, Miss, don't chase me away. What about the Shin family? When I return to the General's mansion this time, I will definitely tell General Shun and Madam Shun about this. Chingru is right. Since I am not the real Shin Yueji, why should I pretend to be Shin Yueji? Since they are already suspicious, they will definitely conclude that I have some habits as their daughter. I am not the real her, so how would I know her habits? I am afraid that there are many flaws in my disguise. But even so, in my heart, you are still me. No matter where you go or what you do, I am willing to follow you faithfully forever. Shuangxi, why do you have to do this? Instead of following me to the unfamiliar northern underworld, where I have no one to rely on, I don't know what will happen in the future. At least in the Feng Nation, you have the support of the General's mansion. The General and Madam don't have a daughter, so they will treat you like their own daughter for the rest of their lives. You don't have to follow me to the northern underworld to suffer. Please, don't chase me away. I sincerely serve you. As long as I can follow you, even if I have to suffer, I will accept it. Lady, Your Highness, if you don't agree, I'll kneel here and never get up again, even if I have to kneel to death. This time, Shin Yueji didn't know what to do with her. She stared at her for a while and shook her head. Okay, I agree. Shuangxi cried tears of joy. Really? Nyang Nyang, have you really agreed to let this servant follow you? If I can't protect myself, Ming, I don't want to drag you down either. When the time comes, I'll order someone to send you back. You don't have to refuse. You treat me with sincerity. I don't want you to lose your life because of me. Do you understand? Shuangxi nodded heavily. Don't worry, Your Highness. This servant will definitely take good care of myself and won't burden Your Highness. Shin Yueji rubbed her forehead, feeling a slight headache coming on. This girl, she said that she didn't want to be a burden to her. What did she understand? Does Your Highness intend to return to the General's estate today? Yes, I will leave for the northern underworld in 3 days. I can't just leave without a word. I have to do something for the Shin family before I leave. Otherwise, wouldn't I implicate them? If His Majesty blames us for this, Her Ladyship treats General and Madam so well. Even when Miss was still alive, she wasn't so considerate. General and Madam are drowning in grief. I believe if. At this point, Shuangxi paused. Why doesn't Your Highness follow what young master said? You are Miss and Mrs. Yu. All of this is just a ploy by the Gu family to sow discord. Madam and General trust Miss so much. I believe that, Miss. As long as you explain, General and Madam will definitely believe you. Chapter 731. General Shun and Madam Shin are not fools. Even your young master is suspicious of me. This is just a matter of proof. Since Gu Mujua has done this, it is enough to prove to them that I am no longer the real Shin Yueji. Unnecessary explanations are just to cover up the fact that I am not Shin Yueji. But Double Happiness still wanted to say something. However, I am very envious of your young lady. At least when I was Shin Yueji, I really felt the feeling of being loved and doted on. General Shun and Shen Foreign are the best parents in the world. Being in a high position, they can love and indulge their own daughter and not use their own daughter to exchange for more glory. No matter when, they are not thinking about their own benefits or the family's benefits. They are only thinking about their daughter. Lady, Double Happiness's heart ached when she heard this, especially after she found out Gu Yueqin's true identity. Through these days of interaction, she realized that Gu Yueqin was really a good person. She would not be spoiled and arrogant, nor would she treat her servants harshly. She would make those who lived with her feel very comfortable. Lady, General and Madam will get over it. At least they still treat you as their daughter. Shin Yueji stopped talking. She did not feel sleepy at all after a sleepless night and talking so much with Double Happiness. Get ready. Let's go back to the General's residence.
Yes.
General's residence, the person driving the horse, was Feng Juqing's most trusted secret guard. He escorted her all the way to the General's residence and then disappeared. Shin Yueji knew he was in the dark. The General's residence's doors were tightly shut. Compared to the past, where there was laughter everywhere, the general's residence was not only empty and quiet, it was more like a gloomy old residence. She could not help but feel sad. She gave Double Happiness a look, and Double Happiness hurried to open the door. The old steward of the general's residence saw her and quickly knelt down to greet her. "Where are father and mother?" "Lady, master and madam are in the study. I don't know what happened to them these few days. They haven't eaten or drunk anything and haven't come out to manage the affairs of the residence. Young master has been handling the affairs of the residence these days. Lady, please go and persuade madam and general. Madam and general have always been the most obedient to you, not eating or drinking." This was the reaction they should have. Yes, when they found out that she was not the real Shin Yueji, or that Shun Yueji, their most beloved daughter, had died. Now that the eldest daughter of the Gu family had joined them, they did not know what to do. They could only choose to punish themselves in this way. Shin Yueji searched through her memories and found the study room. Double Happiness followed closely behind her. "Go to the kitchen and ask them to prepare something to eat. I'll go in myself." "Yes, Your Highness." Then be careful, Your Highness. Based on the current situation, the general and his wife's mood doesn't seem to be too good."
Yes.
Creak. The door of the study had not been opened for several days. When she pushed the door open, not only was the sound unpleasant, but it also stirred up a cloud of dust. "How many times have I told you? Not eating meant not eating. Hurry up and get out for this, daddy." As he cursed, an empty wine pot flew towards Shun Yueji's direction. Chapter 732. Shin Yueji didn't dodge and took Shun He's heavy blow. He was a martial artist. Not only was he strong, but he was also angry. He threw the wine jug to vent his anger. Shin Yueji's entire body swayed. Her forehead heated up and a large amount of blood flowed down from her forehead. Very quickly, her beautiful little face was dyed red. It was a shocking sight to behold. Her face was also extremely pale. Her face was covered in blood, but she gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. Shun He had probably not expected that the person would not dodge, so he raised his head in disbelief. He had naturally heard the sound. With such a heavy object smashing into his head, even a martial artist would be completely crippled. However, when he raised his head and saw Shun Yueji, a gust of wind quickly passed by his eyes and soon, he was pushed by someone. Then, Shinshio quickly stepped forward and pulled Shin Yueji into the room. He painfully took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood off her face. Her beautiful eyes were red and swollen from crying, but when she saw Shin Yueji like this, her eyes became even redder. As for Shun Yueji, that hit just now was not something she could bear. Blood kept flowing from her forehead. Shinshio was so distressed that even the handkerchief couldn't stop the blood. Her tears fell again. "You damned bastard! Who told you to hit my daughter? If anything happens to my daughter, I will never forgive you." Shinhee was also completely shocked. He didn't expect that it would be Shin Yueji who pushed the door open. He thought it was one of the servants in the mansion. Moreover, Shun Yueji was far away in the palace. Why did she suddenly return? At that moment, he didn't have time to think so much. He quickly rummaged through the cabinets to find the medicine. When he finally found it, he hurriedly took it. Shinshio glared at him and snatched the medicine from his hand. "Go away. Don't touch my daughter." Seeing Shun Yueji's forehead bleeding, He was also distressed. He stood there at a loss. My daughter, I'm so sorry. I didn't expect it to be you. If I knew it was you, if he knew it was his daughter, he would have smashed his own head with the wine pot. No matter what, he couldn't hurt his daughter. The better Shin father and Shun mother treated her, the sadder Shin Yueji felt in her heart. Looking at them who had obviously lost a lot of weight after not seeing them for a few days, Shinshio's face was haggard and her eyes were red and swollen. Presumably, after receiving the news from Gu Mujue, she washed her face with tears all day long. Shunhee, on the other hand, had stubble on his face, and his expression was listless. He drank day and night until he was drunk. The two of them locked themselves in the study, not coming out, not eating or drinking. Just like that. "Father, mother, I don't feel any pain." Nonsense, there's such a big wound on his forehead. How can it not hurt? Mother knows that you are in pain. You must be enduring it because you don't want Mother to worry. Mother's daughter is so obedient. Be good, bear with it. Mother will apply medicine for you. Speaking of the bitterness, Shun Xiao could not help but cry. How could her daughter be so obedient? If there was such a big wound on her head, she would have jumped up and cried. How could she sit there so obediently and not even cry out in pain? She just quietly let her apply the medicine. Mrs. Shun, I'm sorry, I lied to you too. Calling her Mrs. Shun confirmed that she was Gu Yueqin and not their daughter's real identity. Chapter 733. Although they already had an answer in their hearts, they had thought a lot during the few days that they locked themselves in the study without eating or drinking. From the beginning, to the hatred of Gu Yueqin for occupying their daughter's body, to the sincerity and filial piety she showed to them, regardless of whether she was Shin Yueji or Gu Yueqin. Even Shun Yueji was not as considerate and understanding as she was. They had never asked about the Gu family's private affairs. For this reason, they had specially sent someone to investigate Gu Yueqin's childhood in the Gu residence. Ever since they found out about what happened to her, they did not hate her as much. She was a pitiful child. She did nothing wrong. The only mistake she made was that she was reincarnated into the Gu family. How could the Gu family have given birth to such an outstanding daughter? Not only did they not cherish her, they even tortured her in every possible way. Shin Xiao's action of applying medicine paused for a moment, but she did not stop. Her tears flowed even more fiercely. Silly child, why do you have to say it? Why do you have to say it? If you don't say it, we will still treat you as our biological daughter. We will still treat you however we want. Just think of it as comforting us. None of us will say it out loud. Shin Yueji held her hand and smiled. Her calm tears were swaying. But I am not the real Shin Yueji, yet I am occupying your daughter's body. After these days, I know how much you two care about her. I am a fake. How can I bear to lie to you again? Actually, the two of you already knew, but I should thank you. You didn't scold me like I thought you would, and you didn't hate me like I thought you would. Thank you, Madam Shun and General Shun. 3 days later, I will leave for the northern underworld. This time, I am returning to the general residence to give the Emperor an explanation. This way, whether I leave or not, it will have nothing to do with the general residence or the Shin family. My departure will not implicate you. The northern underworld? Both of them could not help but widen their eyes. Why are you going to the northern underworld? I am going to find Imo Wushang. The regent? He went to the northern underworld? Yes. She didn't tell them much about Imo Wushang. After all, the two countries were different. She was afraid that if she told them, it would only make things difficult for Imo Wushang and harm him. No matter what, Shan He was a citizen of the Feng nation. As a first-rank general of the Feng nation, he bore the responsibility of the Feng nation. Will you come back after you go to the northern underworld? Shun Yueji shook her head. I don't have anyone to worry about here. What about us? Jier, we are your father and mother. Don't tell me you don't even want your father and mother anymore? His words made Shin Yueji feel as if her heart was being squeezed by someone again. She just stared at them. Now that things had come to this, they were still willing to recognize her as their daughter. To her, this was already a great satisfaction, but she wasn't. She knew that they would still hold grudges against each other. After all, she was not their biological daughter. Qiner. I don't care if you are Ji-er or Qiner. These 2 days, your father and I have thought a lot. Perhaps we really don't have that kind of mother-daughter relationship with Ji-er. Since God arranged for you to come to our side, it might be God's will. In the future, we will also treat you as our biological daughter. Chapter 734. Qiner, no matter what you do, father and mother will still silently support you, just like before. You can choose to be the Prince Regent or the Emperor. It's your own choice. Mother and father won't interfere. We only hope that you can live a happy life. But the North Underworld is so far away from the Feng country. You won't be familiar with the people there. We are worried that you will be bullied. No, he will protect me. He won't let anything happen to me. They had just lost their beloved daughter. Now that they had finally convinced themselves to accept Gu Yueqin, they heard that she was going to leave too. They didn't know when she would come back to the North Underworld. And from her tone, it seemed like she would never come back. Did they lose their only hope now? Seeing their sadness, Shin Yueji held Shin Xiu's hand. Mother, if you miss me, you can come to the North Underworld to see me. I can come back too. No, don't come back. If you come back and the Emperor finds out, I don't know what he will do to you. Your father and I will go to the North Underworld to see you. Shin Xiu wiped his tears. Qin no matter what, you are still our daughter. No matter what you do, father and mother will support you. If that brat Mo Wushang bullies you, just tell mother. Father and mother will help you vent your anger. Mom and dad haven't eaten anything yet. So I asked Double Happiness to go to the kitchen to make something for you. Eat, eat, eat. How can we not eat? Since daughter asked someone to make it for us, it must be something to eat. Shun He held Shun Xiu's hand. Madam, let's go eat. We can't let our daughter worry. Okay. Shin Xiu wiped her tears too. She held Shin Yueji's hand. You just came out of the palace. You haven't eaten anything, right? You must be tired on the way back. Oh right. How did you convince the emperor to allow you to leave the palace? After all, it was very difficult for a woman to leave the palace after entering the palace. This was a rule set by the imperial palace for generations. Father, mother, you don't know. The emperor wants to cooperate with the emperor of Southern Mountain to attack the North Underworld. What? Hearing that, Shan He turned pale with fright, and his expression changed completely. His face was extremely gloomy. Obviously, as the great general of Feng country, he knew Nan Yu's way of doing things very well. Why is the emperor so muddle-headed? Have you forgotten how the people of Southern Mountain treated the people of our Feng nation? Let's not talk about how many of our Feng country's generals and soldiers have been killed by Nan Yu. Just based on Nan Yu's emperor's cruel reputation, how can your majesty cooperate with such a cruel ruler? To what extent are they abandoning the people of Daybreak? Even if they were to work together, it should be the Northern Kingdom and the Phoenix Kingdom working together to fight against Nan Yu, not the other way around. The emperor's thoughts are not something that we, as officials and concubines, can guess or interfere with. However, the envoy from Nan Yu died in the palace last night. I heard that Nan Yu's envoy, Qing Xian, is highly regarded by the emperor of Southern Mountain. No matter where the emperor of Southern Mountain goes, he will bring the imperial tutor. He is also the emperor's right-hand man. Because Emperor Nanyue valued the partnership with the Feng Kingdom, he sent his right-hand man here. But now, something has happened to his right-hand man in the Feng Kingdom's palace, especially under the emperor's watch. Chapter 735. I'm afraid the Emperor of Southern Mountain won't let this go so easily. Even the cooperation won't be resolved so quickly. Shin Yueji knew the Emperor of Southern Mountain. He was a vengeful person. He could kill others, but if the other party killed someone he valued, even if it wasn't someone he valued, he would remember this person for the rest of his life. If he didn't return the favor tenfold or 100-fold, he wouldn't be able to dispel the hatred in his heart. Moreover, Qing Xian was the youngest imperial preceptor of Nanyue Mountain. He had given Nanyue Mountain advice on torturing people. If something happened to Qing Xian in Feng Country, Nanyue Mountain wouldn't just sit back and watch. He deserves it. Humph. Shan He snorted coldly. His tone was full of disdain towards Southern Mountain. Who does Southern Mountain think he is? Does he deserve to cooperate with Feng Country? If your majesty really cooperates with the Dog Emperor of Southern Mountain, I won't lead the army to attack Northern Sea even if I have to bear the crime of disrespecting the imperial edict. Moreover, his daughter was about to marry into Northern Sea. If he attacked, wouldn't he not even have a home for his daughter? Speaking of which, Shin Yueji was really worried that Shan He would really attack Northern Sea with Feng Jiuqing's imperial edict. After all, no matter how ambitious an emperor was, no matter how unwilling an official was, he wouldn't dare to disobey an imperial edict. Moreover, although Southern Mountain's emperor was cruel, At least the cooperation of two strong countries could destroy one country and strengthen their own. The three countries would be united sooner or later. Since ancient times, every emperor had his own ambitions. When the three countries were united in the future, it was still uncertain who would be the leader. Who didn't want their country to have a strong army and become the strongest country in the world? Although Shunhe was upright and righteous, it didn't mean that he didn't have ambitions. Therefore, when she heard his words, Shun Yueji was moved. Rather than saying that he hated the cruelty of Southern Mountain's emperor, it would be more accurate to say that he did it for her. Because she said that she would go to Northern Sea to find Immerse Wushang. In his heart, she would belong to Northern Sea in the future. He didn't purposely ask her about Immerse Wushang's identity. He probably had some answers in his heart, but he didn't point it out. The Shun couple treated her with sincerity. She couldn't help but recall the words that Lu Qingru had said to her. It had indeed left an indelible mark in her heart. She said that the reason why the Shun couple treated her so well was because of her identity as Shun Yueji. They loved and cared about their daughter, not her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been depressed for so long because of what she had said, and she wouldn't have come to lay her cards on the table after finding out that they knew her true identity. Regardless of whether it was their beating, scolding, or anything else, she owed them. She would not retaliate, nor would she resist. But she didn't expect that after knowing her identity, knowing that she was Gu Yueqin and not Shin Yueji, not their biological daughter, they would still treat her like this. She would be lying if she said she wasn't moved. If I'm no longer in Feng country, father and mother have to take good care of themselves. Although Gu Wei and Murong Yun are dead, the reason why the Gu family has been able to prosper in the capital city for so many years is mostly because of Gu Mujue. This person cannot be underestimated. Moreover, she found that Gu Mujue had a prejudice against anger. Chapter 736. Especially after knowing his disgusting thoughts towards her, it was even harder for her to accept than what Lu Qingru had given her. If she knew that she had left Feng country and gone to the North Underworld, she was afraid that she would not let the Shin family off. Don't worry, the Shin family still has eldest brother and you are. Even if Gu Mujue left, your eldest brother and the others are not useless. Especially you are. Although he is not an official, he has the brains of an official. If the Shin family could be defeated so quickly by the Gu family, they would not be so glorious now. Hearing Shan Xiu's words, Shun Yueji reluctantly nodded in relief. She was right. If the Shin family could be defeated so easily, they would have defeated her when she was still Gu Yueqin and would not be so glorious now. What she saw were parents who only knew how to dote on her. She did not see Shunhe's swift and decisive actions in court or when facing enemies. Sure enough, the love between parents was used on their children. So much so that she could not see their fierceness and harshness. Shin Xiu lovingly caressed the wound on her forehead. Even though the wound had been bandaged, she still lovingly caressed it over and over again. Her actions were very careful, and she simply did not dare to touch her forehead. Daughter, does it still hurt? It's all your father's fault. Why didn't you dodge? Your father is a martial artist and did not know how to control his strength. He used all the strength that he brought back from the battlefield on that wine pot. Mother, don't worry. It doesn't hurt. I was just afraid that you would be angry, so I wanted to let you vent. Silly child. This sentence caused Shun Xiu to be unable to hold back her tears. You say such a good child. What does Morong Yun think? So what if she was not the daughter of her and Qinhe? Wrong was wrong. Wrong was that they were not fated to be together. Qin was so gentle and kind and knew how to think for them. Even though they were not her biological parents, she could feel her filial piety and dedication to them. When facing Morong Yun, she did not know how to please and be filial to her. As for her, why could she not see Qin doing well? Poor child, don't worry. In the future, as long as father and mother are here, we won't allow anyone to bully you. Father and mother's words will always count. The general's mansion will always be your backing. Qin. Mother, I heard that my sister is back. Shin Yueqi's voice came from outside. Almost as soon as the voice came, Shinshio took something out of nowhere and threw it at Shun Yuechi. Fortunately, Shun Yuechi had learned to be smart recently and reacted quickly. He hurriedly dodged to the side, but when he saw Shang Guanyu behind him, he was just standing there without dodging or dodging. Startled, he quickly retracted his head and took the initiative to take Shinshio's blow. He grimaced in pain, but Shinshio's strength wasn't as great as Shun He's. However, when he hit Shun Yuechi's head, it still hurt a little. He covered his red head and came in with a grimace. "Mother, why did you smash my head for no reason? Look at how red it is after he smashed it. It's just short of bleeding." However, when he came in and saw Shun Yuechi's head, which was even worse than his eyes widened. He ran over and touched her forehead. Chapter 737. Because it had been bandaged, he didn't know where the wound was. Almost as soon as he touched it, Shun Yuechi immediately gasped in pain. Seeing this, Shinshio's face turned green with anger. She didn't care about her image and kicked him. Shun Yuechi immediately cried out in pain, "Mother, why did you kick me again? How did my sister become like a bear? What did you two do to her when I wasn't back?" Shun Yuechi touched the pain on her forehead. Before she had time to speak, she heard Shinshio's angry voice. "It was your father who hit her." Shun He held his forehead awkwardly and coughed a few times. "Madam, who knew that our daughter would suddenly come back? If I had known that it was our daughter who pushed open the door and came in, I would rather smash my own head than hit her." "You still have the face to say that?" Before he finished speaking, he received a cold stare from Shinshio. Shun He was so scared that he shrank his neck and didn't dare to speak anymore. He was afraid that if he said something wrong, it would make his violent wife angry again. "Daughter, does it still hurt?" He looked at Shun Yuechi with a little distress. Shun Yuechi smiled slightly. "Father, I'm fine. It doesn't hurt anymore." Shun Yuechi stepped forward and held Shun Yuechi's hand. He looked up and down at the wound on her forehead. "It's so swollen. Compared to mine, it's miserable. You're really lucky to be alive." Slap. Another slap landed on his back. Shun Yuechi was angry, but when he saw Shinshio's angry face, he didn't have the courage to admit defeat. I heard that you came back, so I bought some gifts with your brother Shangwan on the street. Let's go and get the gifts." She knew that he had something to say to her alone, but as soon as he finished speaking, Shinshio refused. Is injured. Where are you going with her? She just came back from the palace. You made her stay for dinner after traveling for such a long time. Why can't you take the initiative to bring things to her? Be obedient, daughter. Let's not go. What can't we give you? Those little toys that your brother gave you aren't enough to lower your class. Mother, it's only for a short while. Big brother knows that I'm injured, so he won't mess around. I'll be back soon." Hearing Shun Yuechi say this, Shinshio found it even harder to refuse. He could only reluctantly let go of her hand. "Okay, then you have to come back early to accompany father and mother for dinner. Father and mother have been hungry for a few days. They really want to eat." Shun Yuechi couldn't help laughing. She nodded and left with Shun Yuechi. Shang Guanyu also came with him. "Why did you suddenly return to the manor? Didn't I tell you to stay in the palace?" Shun Yuechi couldn't help but ask as soon as she pulled her to the garden. However, her tone was gentle and there was no hint of anger. "Father and mother already know my identity." Hearing this, Shun Yuechi was stunned for a moment. Then, she looked at the wound on her forehead. "So, after you admitted your identity to Dad and Mom, the wound on your forehead was caused by Dad out of anger?" "Shun Yuechi, but you didn't hide. You didn't cry out in pain after being beaten by Dad. Dad couldn't help but admire your courage, so he didn't pursue the matter of you being Gu Yuechin?" Chapter 738. Shun Yuechi was speechless. What kind of logic was that? Seeing Shun Yuechi's silence, Shun Yuechi felt that his guess was right. He put his hand on her shoulder and said, I'm sorry to have made you suffer. Shin Yueji's mouth twitched, and she slapped his hand away. What are you talking about? Father didn't know that I would come back so suddenly. He thought it was a servant who opened the door and smashed it in anger. He didn't expect it to be me, and I didn't dodge. It has nothing to do with this. Then Shin Yueji smiled. They accepted me. The 6 words that made him the happiest was that they had accepted him. Forgetting the past and accepting her, not because she was Gu Yueqin, not because she had taken over Shan Yueji's body, not because she had taken over their daughter's body, and not because she was a member of the Gu family. Shan Yueqi was taken aback by her words, but he quickly curled his lips into a smile and stared at her for a while. Wait here for a while. Then, without telling Shan Yueji what he was doing, he quickly disappeared from the sight of the two. Behind her, Shang Guanyu kept staring at her. Shin Yueji knew from his gentle gaze that he was really happy for her. Thank you. About the Shin family, there were 2 people who said this to her. Lu Qingru was the first and Shang Guanyu was the second. At that time, because of her selfishness and partiality, she believed Lu Qingru's words. She believed that the reason why the Shin family treated her so well was because of her identity as Shun Yueji. Once her identity was known by them, they would only feel hatred towards her. After all, she was the one who had stolen their own daughter's body. But Shang Guanyu was different. He didn't say that to her. I told you long ago that uncle and auntie are 2 very good people. They are not like what you think they are. Shin Yueji nodded.
Yes.
What are your plans for the future? Do you plan to go back after you come back today? Something happened in the palace, and I finally got the chance to leave. Of course, I won't go back. Seeing the man's eyes brighten, she quickly lowered her head. But I'm going to the North Underworld to find Imo Wushang. I may not come back in the future. I see. His voice was filled with self-mockery, but Shangguan did not say anything else. Seeing him like this, Shin Yueji knew that with Shangguan Yu's intelligence, he had already guessed that Imo Wushang's identity wasn't simple. However, he didn't ask anything. From this, it could be seen that the only person he cared about was herself. Compared to him, I'm not as good as him in every way. Moreover, he's a man that I can trust. Whether you've changed your identity, appearance, he's always the first to recognize you. From this, it can be seen that he cares about you far more than he cares about himself. Back when she was still Gu Yueqin, she was assassinated by Feng Zhiqing because she had an affair with Imo Wushang. Now that she was together with Imo Wushang, he didn't find it strange at all. Perhaps this was fate between them, but between him and her, it was destined that they wouldn't be together. Does uncle and aunt know about this? Yes, they know. My original plan was to let them vent their anger on me if they hate me for this. When the time comes, my relationship with them will be strained. That way, I can leave the Feng Nation without any worries and head for the North Underworld. Chapter 739. This way, I won't implicate the Shin family. But now, I didn't expect them to not only not hate me, but also treat me as their own daughter. Since uncle and auntie have already treated you as their daughter, why don't you stay? It seemed like a casual question, but it revealed a certain expectation that the man suppressed in his heart. If I stay, how can the emperor let me stay in the general's residence unscathed? I can't possibly let father go against the emperor because of me. The Shun family has been loyal for 100 years. How can it be destroyed because of an outsider like me? Even if father and mother are willing, I'm not willing. Speaking of which, I will need young Master Shangguan and father and mother's cooperation to go to the North Underworld in 3 days. Shangguan Yu clenched his fists under his long sleeves. His expression didn't change, but he still smiled and said, "You grew up in the Feng country. I'm afraid you're already familiar with everything here. If there's anything uncomfortable in the North Underworld, I hope you can come back. If you're afraid of implicating the general's residence, I'll bring you back to the Shangguan's residence, even if it's just as a friend." The man said the last sentence weakly. After all, there was still some selfishness in it. Shin Yueji smiled. "Thank you, I will." It was already late at night after she finished her meal in the general's residence. She sat alone on the roof, surrounded by darkness. Only the bright moon in the sky shone on her body, making her body look a little brighter, until a man's figure suddenly landed beside her. She turned her head and saw Hong Fui in a red robe. He was radiant. From the first time she saw this man, she was stunned. She sighed that there was actually a man who was more beautiful than a woman in this world. However, when she saw the true face of the imperial advisor of Southern Mountains, Qing Xian, she was no longer stunned by him. It wasn't that his appearance wasn't as good as Qing Xian's, but the two of them had their own merits. Because she had seen too many handsome men, she naturally became picky about them. I was busy with other things before, so I forgot to tell you about Li Yingying. Oh? She remembered that she had asked him to help her send Li Yingying back to the Li residence so she could take revenge. Has she gotten her revenge? Of course she did. However, after she was done, she chased me away and said that she wanted to stay there alone to calm down. As a result, after I walked far away, when I looked back, she had set fire to the Li residence. As for her, she did not come out. The fire burned very brightly. In their area, the Li residence was considered very big. However, it was still burned to ashes in a short period of time. The woman who did not come out of the Li residence was naturally not spared. She was integrated with the fierce fire. Li Yingying's ending seemed to have been foreseen, but it also seemed like she hadn't foreseen it. After all, if the promises he had made to her were true, naturally, Li Yingying would be happy to accept them. That was because he did not see the people from the Li residence. But when she returned to the Li residence and saw her enemies from the past, although she experienced the thrill of revenge, the people she killed were, after all, her own family. They grew up under the same roof as her. She even had her own biological father. Which one of them didn't watch her grow up? Now, when she saw them die tragically in front of her one by one, there were curses, hatred, begging for mercy. All kinds of emotions were mixed and intertwined. Her heart was in a mess. This made her remember the past in the Li residence. There was also laughter. Chapter 740. Therefore, when she saw them and thought of the past, she could not help but feel depressed. She also remembered that she was now a useless person. She had taken her revenge and did not know what to do in the future. Therefore, she was impulsive and wanted to die with them in the sea of fire. But speaking of which, Shen Yueji, based on your abhorrence of evil, you were even indifferent to your mother's repentance. Furthermore, Li Yingying has betrayed you many times. So why did you still help her do this? You could have killed her when you were in the palace. Why did you have to? Thinking of this, Hong Fui suddenly looked at her. Did you expect that Li Yingying would choose to die with the Li family? Shen Yueji didn't say anything. She just looked at him with a faint smile on her frivolous lips. Just looking at her expression, Hong Fui knew that his guess was right. At that moment, he did not know what words to use to describe his feelings. He only knew that his heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of his throat. He just looked at Shen Yueji for a long time. Did her silent answer not represent to him that she admitted this matter? Hong Fui's guess was right. It turned out that she already knew that when she returned to the Li family's residence, Li Yingying would definitely not be able to bear the blow and choose to die with the Li family. And she, even after Li Yingying died, at the moment of her death, she would remember her kindness in her heart. This terrible woman. Even at the moment of her death, Li Yingying would not know that Shen Yueji had always been scheming against her. She had been scheming for her life and for her death. Perhaps the moment when she began to betray Shen Yueji, it was also within Shen Yueji's calculation. Therefore, Li Yingying's movement, Li Yingying's ending, whether it was her being favored or losing her arm, being favored by the emperor in a short period of time, and being abolished by the emperor in a short period of time, all of these were within Shen Yueji's calculation. In Hong Fui's impression, a woman should be beautiful, well-educated, gentle, and virtuous. But in the short period of time that he spent with Shen Yueji, he finally understood what it meant to kill with kindness and invisibility. This woman was indeed too frightening. Li Yingying's previous complacency and self-righteousness was not even worth mentioning in front of Shen Yueji. because she didn't know that everything she did was all within Shan Yueji's calculations. Shan Yueji, you are indeed a woman who has died once. You are indeed ruthless. But speaking of which, Hong Fui actually began to look forward to it. If she went to the North Kingdom's palace and met that woman named Pang Yuan, who would have a deeper heart, who would be able to surpass them? After all, although Pang Yuan gave people the impression that she was kind and mischievous, just like a little girl who was not familiar with the affairs of the world, only he himself knew that this woman's heart was as vicious as that of a gloomy ghost. She killed people without leaving a trace. No one knew the matters of the harem better than him. Imo Wushang promised me that I'll be his only woman in the future. He'll think of a way to get rid of the women in his harem. If it wasn't for Imo Wushang's promise, Shin Yueji wouldn't have agreed to be with him so easily. She knew that he would definitely do what he said. Chapter 741. Yes, that guy is indeed capable. Most of the beauties in the North Underworld's harem were found by the Empress Dowager from among the commoners. His family doesn't have any backing in the court, so he can kick them out easily. But, at this point, he smiled maliciously, but there are also many daughters of court officials, especially Imperial Consort Pang. No matter how much Imo Wushang dotes on and protects you, it would be harder to chase that woman out than to ascend to the heavens. Shin Yueji, let me give you a piece of advice. Pang Yuan isn't easy to deal with. Her father is the imperial tutor of the court. Even the Empress Dowager recognizes her father as her elder brother and treats her like her own daughter. Not to mention how vicious and merciless this woman is. She loves Imo Wushang as much as her own life. Whether it's Imo Wushang, who is far away in the northern underworld, or Imo Wushang, who was previously in the Feng Nation, she has sent people to secretly monitor him. I'm afraid that she already knows about your existence. With her current personality, she must want to get rid of you as soon as possible. So, when you go to the Dark North Kingdom, you don't have to be on your guard against anyone but Pang Yuan. Even if you become the queen of the Dark North Kingdom in the future, she might not even care about you because of the backing of her maiden family. Hearing this, Shin Yueji smiled slightly. Oh, Imperial Consort Pang? Isn't her current status the same as my status in the Feng country? When I was an Imperial Consort, didn't I also care about Gu Yuan, the Empress? Hearing the man sneer, she turned to look at him. What are you laughing at? You don't care about Gu Yuan, but at least you know how to keep up appearances. But Pang Yuan is different. She doesn't need to keep up appearances at all. In the North Underworld's harem, no one dares to offend her. Although she is an imperial consort, her privileges are even greater than the Empress. At least, her treatment as an imperial consort is much better than when you were the imperial consort of Feng Jiuqing in the Feng country. Really? Shin Yueji paused for a moment. Looks like I've really found an opponent. Although you were the eldest daughter of the Shen family in the Feng country, you were already the imperial consort of the Feng country when you went to the North Underworld. With such an identity and the fact that you left the powerful backing of the Shen family, you were not even worth mentioning in Pang Yuan's eyes. In her eyes, she probably regarded you as a ghost, just like the women she punished before. You must know that no matter how she treated the women in the harem, Imo Wushang would never take it to heart, let alone reprimand her. This would make her think that those women were not as important as her in Imo Wushang's heart. Looking at Shin Yueji's expression, Hong Fui had a bad feeling. Sure enough, Shin Yueji's next words, when I'm here, at least I have my father and mother to support me. At least I won't have to worry for the rest of my life. But if I go to the North Underworld, there will only be Imo Wushang left. If he wants to hurt me because of his childhood sweetheart, I will have nothing left. I can't return to the Feng country. In the North Underworld, other than this huge cage, I can't go anywhere else. Speaking of this, she looked at Hong Fui. I'm starting to regret it. Why don't I continue to stay in the Feng country and be Feng Jiuqing's imperial consort? He has promised me to let me be his empress. At least I am safe here. I will live a life of glory and splendor. No one dares to bully me and act wildly on my head. Chapter 742. Hong Fui had a strong urge to hit himself. If Imo Wuxiang knew about this, the little woman who was finally moved to go with him to the northern underworld would be unwilling to go just because of a few words from him. Actually, you don't have to be so unconfident in Imo Wuxiang. You should know that he is sincere towards you. Even after you changed your body, he quickly recognized you. This is enough to prove to you that this man can really be trusted. But when one is in a high position, there will always be so many things that are beyond his control. Even if he can be trusted by me, he is the emperor of the northern underworld after all. There are so many officials under him. It's fine that he brought another country's emperor's concubine into his harem, but he even directly made me the empress. How can he stop the mouths of the people in the imperial court? Although she was a concubine and not in the imperial court, at least she knew that the position of the empress was not that easy to make. In addition, he had just returned to the northern underworld. The imperial court was in need of manpower. He had also dealt with so many spies and treacherous officials. If it was because of her again, do you think he will make things difficult for you? Hearing Hong Fui's sudden words, Xin Yueji looked at him. The man smiled lightly. Speaking of which, in this world, the only one who can make things difficult for Imo Wuxiang is you. For you, he can become the enemy of the world. He can even abandon the people of the northern underworld. Maybe you don't know, when you were still the empress of Fengjuqing, he stayed in the Feng country alone. He didn't care about the matters of the northern underworld. His eyes were always following you. Even when the Empress Dowager was seriously ill, and even the imperial physicians in the palace were helpless against this serious illness. At that time, you were being framed. In order to protect you secretly, he didn't even care about the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager is really lucky. Yes, it's all thanks to that guy's ruthlessness. Otherwise, how could the Empress Dowager be so angry that she spat out the poisoned blood and recovered? Imo Wuxiang is a person who can give up everything in the world for you. Do you think that he will allow Pang Yuan to bully you in the northern underworld? You don't need to think that he will be in a difficult position. Believe me, if you leave him, that will be the place where he will be in a difficult position. You will make him wish he was dead. You will truly be letting him down. In the past, when he and Imo Wuxiang were still young, this man was as cold as a layer of ice, and no one could get close to him. At their age, they had already tasted the taste of beauties, and he was no exception, especially for someone of Imo Wuxiang's status. The Empress Dowager had sent countless beauties for him, but his heart was still as calm as still water. He had also brought him to a brothel and found the most beautiful girls there to seduce him, but this guy's palm strike almost killed him. All along, he had thought that Imo Wuxiang was just a monk. He was even more of a monk than a monk. Even the legendary Lu Xiaohui might not be able to compare to him. Until that woman appeared, which was Gu Yueqin. It turned out that Imo Wuxiang still knew what it was like to like someone. Previously, he had lamented that he had no reaction to women. But now, he sighed. Wasn't the degree to which he liked and cared for women too deeply? Women were just for fun, especially for rich people like him. Like him, the emperor of the northern underworld, he had countless beauties in his harem. If he fell in love with one, Chapter 743. Someone's coming. Perhaps Hong Fui was too serious that he did not hear the movement behind him. Fortunately, Xin Yueji reminded him in time. Hong Fui narrowed his eyes, leaped up, and left in a flash. Xin Yueji saw that she was indeed looking at the moon on the roof. Working hard to update, please refresh later. This chapter is working hard to update, please refresh later. Hey handsome guys and pretty girls who want to visit us on mobile, please register as a member first. Register as a member of this site and use the bookmark function for easier reading. If this chapter is about the author asking for votes, please skip to the next chapter. Please bookmark this page so that you can read it later. Otherwise, you won't be able to find this chapter. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations Tang Wu-Wei Urban Romance, Abstinent Young Master Li, Flirting, Abstinence Young Master Li, Explode the Sky. Content Summary. No, you're too big. What's too big? Hubby, your thick thighs. Yun Yin was engaged to the most powerful man in the empire. People envied her for marrying Li Yuding, saying that her man had the most powerful backing and the thickest golden thigh. However, one morning, Yun Yin posted on Weibo as Mrs. Li, GM Li, we are divorced. Please respect yourself. In less than a minute, Li Yuding, the head of the Li Corporation, replied with at message, honey, it's getting cold. Let's talk about our private affairs in bed. Be good and give me your phone. Countless netizens were seething and said, kick over this bowl of dog food. We're not eating it. Abstinence young masterly, explode the sky. Forwarding address /HTML/111/11545//HTML/111/11545/content trial reading. Chi-Chi first updated Chi-Chi //chapter 1. 2 months of pregnancy diagnosis. Secretary Yun. This is my 2-month pregnancy diagnosis. The child is CEO Li's. A report suddenly fell from the sky and landed right in front of Yun Yin. Yun Yin raised her head and saw a delicate, yet arrogant face. You are? Yun Yin frowned. The woman looked down at her proudly. I'm President Li's girlfriend, Li Fei Fei. Oh, Yun Yin remembered. She was wondering why this woman's face looked so familiar. 2 months ago, a paparazzi published a gossip about a new singer, Li Fei Fei, and Li Yuting spending a romantic night together in a hotel. The news only appeared on the internet for less than an hour before it was completely erased by the public relations department of the Li Group in a thunderous manner. She glanced at the pregnancy diagnosis and calculated the time. It matched up with the scandal from 2 months ago. As if knowing what she was thinking, Li Fei Fei rubbed her belly and smiled. You guessed right. It was 2 months ago when I was pregnant with President Li's child. Yun Yin raised an eyebrow. Miss Li, I'm not the one who made you pregnant. What's the point of you looking for me? She choked on her words. I've looked into you. You're the woman who has been by CEO Li's side the longest. I don't believe you two aren't related. This pregnancy list is to tell you that if you know what's good for you, you should keep your distance from CEO Li. Otherwise, if I become Mrs. Li, the first person I'll treat will be you. Yun Yin was interested. Since you're CEO Li's girlfriend, do you know what kind of woman he hates the most? Li Fei Fei was stunned. What kind of woman? A woman who has plastic surgery. You have plastic surgery. Li Fei Fei was exasperated. Miss Li, you know best whether I have plastic surgery or not. Under Li Fei Fei's angry gaze, Yun Yin pushed away the chair and stood up. She said generously, however, I will hand this pregnancy report to CEO Li on your behalf. I hope that Miss Li can become Mrs. Li soon. Then, ignoring Li Fei Fei's embarrassed face, she turned around and left. As soon as she got out of the elevator, Yun Yin saw the secretaries standing in a row. Linda waved at her. Yun Yin, come here. Yun Yin immediately went over. What's wrong? Assistant Chen just called. He said that CEO Li will be here soon. He should be in the elevator now. Another secretary, Andy, said excitedly, CEO Li will be away for almost a month. We should welcome him well. As he spoke, he showed off his 36D breasts. Yun Yin quietly looked away. The elevator door opened with a ding sound. The man who walked out of the elevator first was wearing a black custom-made suit. His slender body was perfectly wrapped in well-tailored clothes. His deep, chiseled face, which usually showed a sense of indifference and alienation, was now faintly carrying suppressed anger. There weren't many people in this world who could make Xiaoli so angry. Just as Yun Yin was trying to figure out what was going on, Li Yuding suddenly walked towards her. Yun Yin suddenly had a bad feeling. Usually, in the company, in front of outsiders, he never acted intimately with her. He didn't even look at her. In his eyes, she was like air. Therefore, in the entire company, only a few people knew that she was a married woman. And no one knew that she was Mrs. Li, abstinence young master Li. Chapter 744. Indeed, Shin Yuechi's status in this world was already incomparable to that of a mortal. Aside from Feng Juqing, he was the second most outstanding man in the Feng country. Although he looked unrestrained on the surface, Shin Yueji still knew that there were many women who admired him in the capital. They even said that they would only marry him in this lifetime. Not only when she was Shin Yueji, but when she was Gu Yueqin, she had also heard rumors about him on the streets. However, because of their different standpoints and their backgrounds as enemies, she did not pay much attention to him. Yes, my background and identity are indeed rare in this world. Unfortunately, she doesn't like me. You don't like her? The word she doesn't like was like a magic barrier. Yes, there was nothing more unbearable than not liking someone. Plus, our standpoints are different. It's impossible for us to be together. So, a long time ago, I put away that kind of thought. I thought that it's good to see her happy. So, Big Brother has never married in this life. It's all because of her? Shin Yuechi looked at her and smiled. This is the first time in my entire life that I've liked a woman so much. In the past, I didn't hate women that much, but at the very least, I wasn't that close to them. It was only after I met her that I finally felt the desire to protect someone. / Unfortunately, she's destined to not care about me. Then, does she know how you feel about her, Big Brother? Her. Shin Yuechi purposely dragged out the word and flicked her nose. Shin Yueji felt the pain when her nose was flicked. She rubbed her nose and glared at him. Why did you hit me? She probably doesn't even know what I look like. Her eyes only know how to follow that man. She might have heard rumors about me, but she has never seen me. So, Big Brother, your love is unrequited. Shin Yueji suddenly understood. Hearing this, Shin Yuechi sighed again. Sigh, don't you think Big Brother is pitiful? I like someone, but it's unrequited? She doesn't even know how I feel about her. Since it's unrequited love and she's never seen you before, how did you fall in love with her? Although I have never seen her, I have heard of her. Moreover, every time she sneaks out of the mansion with her friends, I will secretly follow her. As if he was a thief, he stared at her bright smile. The women of aristocratic families smiled without showing their teeth, but none of them had a smile as brilliant as hers. It was not bashful, and there was nothing fake about it. As if recalling the past, Shin Yuechi curled her pretty lips and suddenly smiled. At that time, I thought that silently following behind her for the rest of my life was also a kind of satisfaction for me. This was an indescribable feeling that was suppressed in the bottom of his heart. Until she got married, he became dispirited. He drank himself drunk many times in the middle of the night and continued to revert to his unruly nature during the day. How is she doing now? She is already dead. Dead? Yes, her husband didn't love her. She was laughed at by others and was killed by her husband. Speaking of this, he chuckled with endless sarcasm. If I hadn't met her, perhaps I would have been married and had a beautiful wife and children. Chapter 745. However, after I met her, regardless of whether she married or not, I knew that I would never fall for another woman in this lifetime. Rather than marrying a woman he doesn't love and leaving her to live alone in an empty house, it's better not to marry for the rest of his life and live a carefree and contented life. Dead. Working hard to update. Please refresh later. This chapter is working hard to update. Please refresh later. Hey handsome guys and pretty girls who want to visit us on mobile, please register as a member first. Register as a member of this site and use the bookmark function for easier reading. If this chapter is about the author asking for votes, please skip to the next chapter. Please bookmark this page so that you can read it later. Otherwise, you won't be able to find this chapter. Translator, Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi Translations Tang Wu Wei Urban Romance. Abstinent Young Master Li. Flirting. Abstinence Young Master Li. Explode the Sky. Content Summary. No, you're too big. What's too big? Hubby, your thick thighs. Yun Yin was engaged to the most powerful man in the empire. People envied her for marrying Li Yuding, saying that her man had the most powerful backing and the thickest golden thigh. However, one morning, Yun Yin posted on Weibo as Mrs. Li, GM Li, we are divorced. Please respect yourself. In less than a minute, Li Yuding, the head of the Li Corporation, replied with a message, honey, it's getting cold. Let's talk about our private affairs in bed. Be good and give me your phone. Countless netizens were seething and said, kick over this bowl of dog food. We're not eating it. Abstinence Young Master Li. Explode the Sky. Chapter 1. 2 months of pregnancy diagnosis. Secretary Yun. This is my 2-month pregnancy diagnosis. The child is CEO Li's. A report suddenly fell from the sky and landed right in front of Yun Yin. Yun Yin raised her head and saw a delicate, yet arrogant face. You are? Yun Yin frowned. The woman looked down at her proudly. I'm President Li's girlfriend, Li Fei Fei. Oh, Yun Yin remembered. She was wondering why this woman's face looked so familiar. 2 months ago, a paparazzi published a gossip about a new singer, Li Fei Fei, and Li Yuting spending a romantic night together in a hotel. The news only appeared on the internet for less than an hour before it was wiped out by the public relations department of the Li Group in a thunderous manner. She glanced at the pregnancy diagnosis and calculated the time. It matched up with the scandal from 2 months ago. As if knowing what she was thinking, Li Fei Fei rubbed her belly and smiled. You guessed right. It was 2 months ago when I was pregnant with President Li's child. Yun Yin raised an eyebrow. Miss Li, I'm not the one who made you pregnant. What's the point of looking for me? / I've looked into you. You're the woman who has been by CEO Li's side the longest. I don't believe you two aren't related. This pregnancy list is to tell you that if you know what's good for you, you should keep your distance from CEO Li. Otherwise, if I become Mrs. Li, the first person I'll treat will be you. Yun Yin was interested. Since you're CEO Li's girlfriend, do you know what kind of woman CEO Li hates the most? Li Fei Fei was stunned. What kind of woman? A woman who has plastic surgery. You have plastic surgery. Li Fei Fei was furious. Miss Li, you know best whether I have plastic surgery or not. Under Li Fei Fei's angry gaze, Yun Yin pushed the chair away and stood up. She said generously, but I'll give this pregnancy list to CEO Li for you. By the way, I hope you can become Mrs. Li soon. Then, ignoring Li Fei Fei's embarrassed face, she turned around and left. As soon as she got out of the elevator, Yun Yin saw the secretaries standing in a row. Linda waved at her. Yun Yin, come here. Yun Yin immediately went over. What's wrong? Assistant Chen just called. He said that CEO Li will be here soon. He should be in the elevator now. Another secretary, Andy, said excitedly. CEO Li will be away for almost a month. We should welcome him well. As he spoke, he showed off his 36D breasts. Yun Yin quietly looked away. The elevator door opened with a ding sound. The man who walked out of the elevator first was wearing a black, high-end custom-made suit. His slender body was perfectly wrapped in well-tailored clothes. His deep, chiseled face, which usually showed a sense of indifference and alienation, was now faintly carrying suppressed anger. There were probably not many people in this world who could anger CEO Li to this extent. Just as Yun Yin was trying to figure out what had happened, CEO Li suddenly walked straight towards her. Yun Yin suddenly had a bad feeling. Usually, in the company, in front of outsiders, he never acted intimately with her. He didn't even look at her. In his eyes, she was like air. Chi-Chi's first appearance on the internet, therefore, in the entire company, only a few people knew that she was a married young woman. And no one knew that she was Mrs. Li, Abstinence Young Master Li, exploding the heavens. Door address /HTML/111/1111545 HTML/111/1111545 content reading. Chapter 746. How would you know if you don't try? Father and mother care about you as much as their own lives. As long as you say it, they will agree without hesitation. North Underworld and Phone Country are the same to them. It's just a change of environment. Plus, the Emperor actually cooperated with the Tyrant of Southern Mountain in order to destroy the Northern Underworld. Because of this, there's already a ball of fire in my father's heart that can't be released. As long as the Shun family has been loyal to the Feng Nation for 100 years. If I instigate my father to go to the Northern Underworld with me, it's undoubtedly asking him to betray his own country. This way, the Shin family's reputation in the Feng Nation is destined to go down in history. Shun Yuechi chuckled and looked at her with a gratified gaze. It's rare that you are so considerate of the Shin family. Father and mother are actually more open-minded about some things than you and I. The Shin family has shed blood for the people of Feng Country. Although we have gained the support and love of the people in the capital, under this love, we can't afford to be provoked and schemed against. Once the Shin family loses and the people suffer, not only will the Shin family's reputation plummet, we will also be hated to the bone by those people. If it was because of the framing, those people would not remember the hard work and merits of the Shun family all these years. They would only have ugly faces and would not remember that the Shin family had once fought on the battlefield for them. How many families were separated and how many soldiers of the Shin family died on the battlefield? They will only think about themselves. They will think that if the Shin family can't take care of them, they will be like trash that will be trampled on by them. They will feel proud. The Shin family's status and power in the Feng Nation is monstrous. If they can step on the Shin family that used to be high and mighty, how glorious would that be? Would it be something worth showing off? They will never remember the peace and happiness the Shun family gave them in the past. He caressed Shun Yueji's hair. Do you understand what I'm saying? Shun Yueji nodded. Of course, she understood. That was human nature. After experiencing 2 lives, she had long since come to terms with it and had thought things through a lot. You and I aren't the only ones who understand this. Father and mother also understand this. Even if you don't say it, I believe they already have the same thoughts. They just need to think about it. In addition, the Emperor was cooperating with the Emperor of Nanyu, which was undoubtedly inciting his father to betray him. As long as Imo Wushang doesn't take the initiative to attack the people of Feng Nation and cause them to fall into dire straits, what's wrong with asking father to side with him? Big brother. Very quickly, Shun Yuechi retracted his hand and sat up straight. Of course, don't think that I'm doing this for you. I've been wanting to go to the Phoenix Nation in the Northern Underworld for a long time. I've been to the Northern Underworld secretly before, and I've been full of praises for the beautiful scenery there. They want to go to the Dark North Kingdom not only because of you. On the contrary, because of your relationship with Imo Wushang, they might even be able to continue living a prosperous life in the Dark North Kingdom. They are doing this for their future glory and wealth. Think about it carefully. After saying this, Shun Yuechi prepared to leave. Seeing him get up, Shun Yueji prepared to return the clothes that he had on earlier to him. Big brother. Seeing him get up, Shun Yueji prepared to return the clothes that he had on earlier to him. Big brother. Chapter 747. Shin Yuichi looked back at her. It's cold on the roof. It's late at night. Put on your clothes first. Don't catch a cold. Shin Yuichi didn't say anything else after hearing what he said. She put on his clothes and stared at the moon in a daze. To be honest, what Shin Yuichi said really moved her. In this way, she could be with her father and mother forever. In Dark North, as long as they were there, she wouldn't be alone. Shin family had done a lot for Feng country. In addition, Xianhe's experience on the battlefield and his principles as an official, if he really went to Dark North, not only would it be good for Shin family, it would also be great for Imo Wushang. After all, Dark North needed people. The Shin family was half of the Feng kingdom, if it was given to Dark North because of this, but she hesitated because if Xianhe didn't agree, his loyalty to Feng Juqing, his loyalty to the Feng nation. Once she went to the North Underworld, plus she didn't know the situation in the North Underworld, and she didn't know what kind of situation she would be in. She also didn't know how the Empress Dowager was in the North Underworld, and there was also Pang Yuan that Hong Fui mentioned. These hidden dangers had been haunting her, and she hadn't seen them with her own eyes. Even if Shunhe was willing to promise her, she still couldn't guarantee their safety. She was afraid that she would implicate them. In this way, not only would the North Underworld not tolerate them, even the Feng Kingdom, whether it was Feng Juqing or the people of the Feng Kingdom, would not tolerate them anymore. After all, a general of Feng country betrayed his country and went to Dark North. In the garden at the moment, Shun Yueqi was forcefully dragged to the back garden by two people, one on the left and one on the right. Shin Yueqi's handsome face twitched. Why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you doing? As he howled, his ear was pinched again. He instantly grimaced in pain and covered his ear with his hands. You, lower your voice. Don't let Jier hear you. Father Shin viciously whispers a threat in his ear. Shin Yueqi was really afraid that he was too loud. He didn't know how these two old clowns would torture him. Speaking of which, he was really a blade of grass in the family. These two really didn't know that he was their biological son. Now that he was facing Gu Yueqin, he finally knew who was their biological son. Obviously, he was thinking too much again because he wasn't even his biological son. Sai, what did you say to Jier? Did Jier agree? Hearing this, Shun Yueqi couldn't help but roll her eyes at the Shin father. Father, mother, when I was on the roof with Jier, weren't you two listening down there? Don't tell me you didn't hear what I said to her. I heard it at first. Shin Xiu angrily pulled his ear. Who told you to lie down? Do you know that when you lie down, the voices of the two of you obviously became softer? Your father and I used all our skills, but we still couldn't hear what you were saying. Really? Shun Yueqi raised an eyebrow. You damn child. Would your father and mother lie to you? Tell us, what did Jier say? Did she agree to go with us to the northern underworld? Father, mother, why don't you take a guess? Did Jier agree? Shun Yueqi didn't directly state Shun Yueji's concerns. Instead, she deliberately winked at them to keep them guessing. As expected, Shin Xiu let go of him and was thinking seriously with her chin in her hand. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, Regent, Messing with Clawbook House for free. Chapter 748. Old Thing, do you think Ji-er will agree to us? This, I don't know either. Seeing that his wife threw this tricky problem to him, Shun-hee was also in a difficult position. This, he wasn't sure either. To be honest, he and Shen-xiu really wanted to go to the northern underworld to find an official position. After all, Shun Yueji was going to an unfamiliar place alone. Other than Imo Wushang, of course, there was no one else to rely on, unlike their Feng country where the Shen family was there. Based on Shan Yueji's character, they were really afraid that when she was bullied in the palace of the northern underworld, she would swallow her anger and not tell them for fear that they would be in a difficult position. This was what really made the two elders feel distressed. Therefore, on that day, when Shin Yueji said that she wanted to go to the northern underworld, Shan-hee and Shen-xiu thought about it for nearly a day. After dinner, the two elders locked themselves in the room again. Instead of Shun Yueji going to the northern underworld alone, they didn't know if she would be bullied and make them worry. It was better for them to go to the northern underworld together. This way, they could take care of each other. After all, he was the great general of Feng country. If he brought the soldiers who had followed him for many years to the northern underworld, and based on his relationship with Imo Wushang as his father-in-law and son-in-law, he should at least give them a position no lower than the second rank, right? Almost as soon as they had this idea, Shun-hee and Shin-xiu immediately discussed it. Who knew that his wife had the same idea as him? It was really exciting just thinking about it. Therefore, Shin-hee and Shin-xiu quickly reached an agreement, and then they couldn't tell Shin Yueji about this matter, so they needed time to buffer. Therefore, they wanted to let their son, who had finally remembered that he had a son, marry him first to test Ji-er's words. Seeing that they were in a difficult position, Shan Yueji didn't dare to keep them in suspense anymore, in case they got angry. By then, they would be the ones to suffer. Of course, Ji-er agrees to go to the northern underworld with you. Really? Shun-hee and Shun-xiu widened their eyes at the same time. But it was this but that instantly extinguished the two elders' joy. They looked at him and asked, "But what?" "But of course, Ji-er is worried about you. Father has worked hard for the people of Feng country, and the Shun family has been loyal to Feng country for 100 years. She's afraid that father will be put in a difficult position. She's even more afraid that father will be scolded by the people of Feng country when he goes to northern underworld. She's even more afraid that she won't know what she'll experience when she goes to northern underworld." If she can't even protect herself, then there'll be no place for father and mother in northern underworld. If that happens, not only will northern underworld not accept you, even the people of Feng country will despise father and mother. Even Feng Juqing might not put you in an important position, as expected of my good daughter. Look, even at a time like this, she is still thinking about us. Madam, we can't let our daughter down. Yeah, who wouldn't agree? Such a good daughter. We definitely have to go with her. We only have one daughter, and we've already lost one. We can't lose a second one. Shin Yueji, go and tell Ji-er that we're willing to go to northern underworld with her. Tell her not to worry about Feng country. Tell her that we're more open-minded and understand more. Tell her not to worry. Chapter 749. Shun Yueji was speechless. Don't worry, that's what I told her. But according to her, I think she'll go back to the northern underworld to check out the situation. If she thinks it's okay and that you can stay in the northern underworld, She'll let you know. I see. Mother Shin muttered to herself, how long will that take? Don't wait too long. Yeah. Father Shin quickly agreed. We can't leave our daughter for that long. Shin Yuechi said, Dad, Mom, although my sister went to the northern underworld, at least you still have me, you? Pfft. Who do you think you are to be compared to your sister? Is there something wrong with your brain? Don't you know what you're worth? Yeah. You overestimate yourself. Shun Yuechi was speechless. Although the answer was not what he wanted to hear, at least it was not bad. Father Shin put his arm around Mother Shin's shoulder. Madam, it's getting late. Let's go back and rest. As for what happens next, we'll wait for our daughter. Okay. After they got the answer they wanted, they left with their arms around each other. Shin Yuechi's head started to hurt again. He seriously felt that he had no place in this family. It was getting late. He stood in the cold wind in the back garden for a while and finally felt sleepy. He covered his mouth and yawned. Just as he was about to go back to sleep, he saw Shangguan Yu's handsome face. Brother Shangguan? It's so late. Why aren't you asleep yet? He couldn't help but feel surprised. Seeing Shangguan Yu staring at him, he instinctively took a step forward. What's wrong? Is it because the food in the general's mansion isn't good recently? Is it because of you? When his parents found out about Shen Yueji's identity, before she returned to the palace, they specifically ordered that the people in the mansion were only allowed to eat vegetables and not meat. Although this kind of food had been changed, Shangguan Yu, who had been a vegetarian for a couple of days, was indeed a bit too much. After all, being vegetarian was really too vegetarian. Brother Yuechi, I've been here for a while. Huh. For a moment, Shun Yuechi didn't understand what he meant. She looked at him and asked, and then? I overheard some of your conversation with Uncle Shen and Aunt Shan just now, Shen Liangchuan said. Shin Yuechi, and then? If you plan to go to the northern underworld with Ji-er, can you bring me along? This time, Shun Yuechi was completely speechless. He stared at him for a long time to make sure that he was not joking. After a long time, he finally found his voice and said, Brother Shangguan, do you know what you're talking about? Of course. The Shangguan family's business has spread all over the country, and we've been to every place. So, what are you trying to express to me by saying this? I want to say, Brother Yuechi, you don't have to think that father and mother will refuse. They also have their own businesses and mansions in the northern underworld. If Brother Yuechi, Uncle Shin, and Aunt Shin plan to go to the northern underworld, then not only me, but also father and mother. As long as I go back and talk to them, they will agree. After all, the Shangguan family and the Shun family had always been close. Moreover, if the Shin family went to the northern underworld, his father and mother would follow without him saying anything. Chapter 750. It was also a form of help to Uncle Shin and the rest. To his mother and father, it didn't matter where they lived as long as they could follow Uncle Shin and the rest. Of course, the northern underworld was the best. After all, the scenery of the northern underworld was world famous. Shun Yuechi suddenly felt a throbbing pain in his head. No, he couldn't understand. Wasn't this a very serious matter, one that was worthy of deep consideration? Why were these people acting like they were playing house? Especially Shangguan Yu? Brother Shangguan, have you thought it through? With Ji-er's current identity, there's no possibility between you and her. Even if she's not Feng Jiuqing's woman, she'll still be Imo Wushang's empress when she goes to the northern underworld. You're just a stranger to her. In addition to Imo Wushang's character, he didn't like you at all when you were in the Feng nation because of your feelings for Ji-er. If you go to the northern sea, do you think there will be a place for you in his territory? I understand Brother Yuechi's concerns. However, I've already made up my mind. If Ji goes to the northern underworld, then there's really no place for me to stay in Feng country. My thoughts are the same as Uncle Shin and Aunt Shin. We want to see her happy. Otherwise, we won't be satisfied. We're going to the northern underworld because we're family. What about you, Brother Shangguan? Shangguan Yu smiled bitterly. Now, Brother Yuechi, what kind of relationship do you think I have with Ji? Of course, I'm family. Now, as long as Ji is living well, I'm willing to be a family member and watch her live a carefree life. From what you said, Brother Shangguan, you don't plan to marry and have children in the future? Marry and have children? This matter was very far away from him after he met Shin Yueji. Previously, he had thought that as long as the person wasn't Shin Yueji, he wouldn't marry any other woman. Even if Shin Yueji didn't like him, he didn't plan to marry anyone else. A trace of sadness flashed across the handsome man's eyes. He smiled silently. Brother Yuechi, you're joking again. You know that. Hearing this, Shun Yuechi sighed and stopped poking at his sore spot. He stepped forward and patted his shoulder. Brother Shangguan, I won't hide it from you. In this world, if any other man had a change of heart towards my Ji, I would hate him to death. I would want to eat his flesh and crush his bones. But you're different. I sincerely hope that you can be happy. Besides, we've known each other for so many years. Although you used to follow my sister around and never put me in your eyes. But in any case, we grew up together, don't you think? Shangguan Yu did not speak, but lowered his head. What I mean is very clear. In the future, if you meet a girl you really like, you can marry her. You don't have to feel sorry for Ji or the Shin family. All these years, you have suffered in the hands of my sister, and we have shown our understanding. So, Brother Yuechi, you don't have to persuade me anymore. I know what to do. Okay. Shun Yuechi patted his shoulder again. Brother Shangguan, you're a wise man. I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. I won't say anything more. I'm going to go back and rest. It's getting late. You should go back and rest. Chapter 751. After that, Shun Yuechi turned around and left. Shangguan Yu was left alone, staring at his receding figure. Seeing that his slender figure had not yet disappeared around the corner, he suddenly said, Brother Shangguan, I've made up my mind. I'll still go with you to the northern underworld. I'll go back and discuss this with my parents. 3 days later, I'll go with Ji. Whoosh! Shun Yuechi had already gone far, but after hearing his words, he came back quickly. His speed was so fast that even Shangguan Yu was slightly surprised. You can't go with Ji. Otherwise, no one will take care of you. Even if you go with us to the northern underworld, you have to go with us. Tell me, if Imo Wushang finds out that you're going with Ji, do you think he'll tolerate you? If you follow us, at least we'll protect you. Don't you think so? Shangguan Yu stared at him blankly. Although Imo Wushang can't tolerate Ji having other women by her side, at least, he's not a despicable person. Why would he take my life because of this? Ji and the future son-in-law of the Shin family haven't seen each other for a long time. Now that we've finally met, we naturally have a lot to talk about. Brother Shangguan, do you think you'll be heartbroken to see my little sister in the northern underworld? Or, indeed, Shun Yuechi had said those words out of consideration for him. Although he was only willing to stand behind Shin Yueji and watch her live a happy life, when he saw the woman he loved flirting with another man, his heart would definitely ache. Moreover, it would numb him. Shun Yuechi didn't have the heart to poke at his sore spot, so he just said, think carefully. If you're sure to go with us to the northern underworld, it won't be you and Ji but us. After all, this is the Feng country, right under the emperor's nose. Everything needs to be done properly. I understand. The night was as dark as ink. Shin Yueji stood alone in front of the window, looking at the hazy moonlight, deep in thought. Double Happiness came in with a plate of snacks and saw her staring blankly out of the window. Miss, what's wrong? Is there something on your mind?
Yes.
Shin Yueji nodded. Thinking about how we have to leave here in 3 days and head for the northern underworld, I suddenly feel a little reluctant. After all, this was her homeland. Even though this homeland had caused her a lot of harm, it was still the place she had grown up in. As she sighed, she would always feel some reluctance. Double Happiness placed the desserts on the table, walked behind her, and draped a robe over her. I heard from the general and madam that the scenery in the northern underworld is extremely beautiful. It is famous in the Three Kingdoms. Many citizens of the southern mountain and the Feng nation go to the northern underworld. When you get to the northern underworld, you might be mesmerized by the scenery there. At that time, why would you think about the troubles in the Feng nation? Hearing this, Shun Yueji turned to look at her. Are you sure you want to go to the northern underworld with me? Shuangshi nodded solemnly. Miss, this servant has thought it through. No matter where you go, this servant will follow you. Moreover, it's not just me. Eldest young master, the general's wife, and young master Shangguan will also be going with you to the northern underworld. Shangguan Yu? Shin Yueji was slightly stunned, as if she didn't expect him to go to the northern underworld. Is he going too? If you want to chat about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find bosom friends. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.